Good morning, beautiful souls. Today I want to speak directly to the part of you that feels stuck, unsure, maybe even afraid. You've been praying, waiting, and hoping for a sign. You've asked God to speak, and I'm here to tell you, sometimes the silence is the sign, and sometimes the sign is loud, clear, and impossible to ignore. You quote, "We've been praying, waiting, searching for clarity, but now things around you don't feel right anymore. The peace you once had seems distant. What used to excite you now feels empty." That's not a coincidence. That's discomfort. And it may be God's way of telling you something. Often when God wants to shift us into a new season, He doesn't always start with a loud voice from heaven. Sometimes He starts with a whisper in the form of divine discomfort. Discomfort isn't always bad. In fact, it's often one of God's most loving tools. He allows us to feel unsettled when we've outgrown a place, a role, or a relationship. Just like a seed must crack open before it can sprout, sometimes your life has to feel like it's breaking for something new to grow. Discomfort is often the first sign that your environment is no longer aligned with your purpose. It's that inner knowing that you were made for more than what you're currently experiencing. And while it's tempting to stay in familiar territory, growth doesn't happen in places of safety. Growth happens in places of stretching. Think about it. How many times have you tried to force peace in a place where God was already pulling away His grace? You try to make it work. You try to convince yourself it's just a rough patch. But deep down your soul is uneasy. That unease might not be anxiety. It might be the Holy Spirit prompting you to move. God will allow you to feel the friction so you stop settling for what no longer serves your destiny. Remember the story of the Israelites in Egypt. They cried out under the weight of slavery and oppression. It was painful, but that pain wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of their movement. God heard their cries and used their discomfort to lead them toward freedom. Sometimes the greatest discomfort in your life is actually the birthplace of deliverance. We're often so attached to our comfort zones that we forget they can become cages. What was once a blessing can become bondage when we stay too long. That job you once prayed for may now be draining your soul. That relationship that once helped you grow may now be holding you back. That place you once called home may now feel like a burden. And when you feel those shifts, it's not something to fear. It's something to discern. But here's the challenge. Discomfort requires courage. It takes courage to move when nothing is broken, just uncomfortable. It takes faith to leave the known for the unknown. But that's exactly where God meets you, in the steps of obedience. He doesn't always show you the full picture, but He will always give you enough to take the first step. God uses discomfort to detach us from places we've clung to too tightly. He interrupts our comfort so we can rediscover our calling. And in that space of tension, between where you are and where you're called to be, you find clarity. You begin to see that staying is more dangerous than moving. That holding on is heavier than letting go. So if you're feeling that uneasiness in your spirit, don't ignore it. Don't numb it with distractions. Don't silence it with busyness. Lean in. Ask God, what are you trying to show me? What am I holding on to that you're asking me to release? Because that discomfort might be a divine invitation. You don't need to have all the answers before you move. You just need to trust the one who's calling you. He knows what's ahead. He sees the doors you can't, and sometimes He loves you too much to let you stay where you are. The discomfort isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's the space between what was and what's next. It's not there to hurt you. It's there to help you grow. You've done everything right. You showed up, stayed loyal, gave your best. You knocked on the door. You prayed over it. You fasted for it. You even believed that it would open. But instead of a breakthrough, you got silence. Or worse, a slammed door. The opportunity fell through. The relationship ended. The promotion went to someone else, and now you're left wondering, why would God let this happen? It's confusing, even painful. But what if the closed door wasn't a rejection? What if it was redirection? When God closes a door, it's not because He's forgotten you. It's because He sees what you can't. He sees what's on the other side of that door. And sometimes what's behind it is something that would hinder your purpose, not help it. He sees the full picture, while you and I only see a single frame. And so in His grace, yes, grace, He blocks the way. He lets the deal fall apart. He lets the connection fade. He lets the door shut tight because He loves you enough not to let you settle. We often pray for open doors, for God to make a way, to bless our efforts. But we forget that sometimes His greatest act of guidance is in what He doesn't allow. It's in the no, the not yet. And even the you're not meant to go there. Closed doors aren't signs of failure. They are signs that your life is being curated, not left to chance. And yet in our humanity, we try to force it. We keep banging on the door, frustrated that it won't budge. We manipulate situations. We cling to what's familiar. We ignore the obvious signs that it's time to let go. But here's the truth. When God closes a door, no amount of striving, convincing, or crying will open it. It's sealed, not to punish you, but to protect you. Imagine trying to walk through a door that's not yours. It may look like the right one. It may feel like everything you thought you wanted. But if God didn't open it, then it's not your door. And what's not yours will never bring you peace. It may bring temporary satisfaction, but it won't bring purpose. And God is far more interested in your purpose than your comfort. Think of how many people in the Bible experienced divine redirection. Paul wanted to preach in certain regions, but the Holy Spirit stopped him. He didn't understand it in the moment, but later he saw that God was guiding him to a far greater impact. Joseph had doors of opportunity slammed shut over and over. Betrayal, slavery, prison. But every closed door led him to the exact place he needed to be, the palace, where he would save an entire nation. So the next time you face a closed door, don't immediately see it as rejection. Step back and ask, what is God protecting me from? Or what is he preparing me for? You see, the closed door could be saving you from wasted time, emotional burnout, spiritual stagnation, or even danger you can't perceive. You may not see it now, but trust me, on the other side of that door could be something that would delay or derail your destiny. That's why God doesn't just open doors. He also guards them. And here's something beautiful. Sometimes God will close a good door to open a better one. The job you didn't get, maybe it's because he has a role that aligns more with your calling. The relationship that didn't work out, maybe it's because he preserving your heart for someone who will love and lead you better. The opportunity that fell through. Maybe it's because God is making room for something you never imagined. Something that won't just fulfill you, but grow you. You don't have to understand every closed door to trust the one who controls them. He is a good father, and good fathers don't give their children everything they ask for. They give them what's best. So if God has closed a door in your life, don't mourn what you lost. Praise him for what he's making room for. You didn't fail. You're being led. You didn't miss your moment. You're being repositioned. The no was not the end. It was the turning point. And one day, you'll look back and thank God for every door that didn't open, because it led you to the one that did. So breathe. Release the need to force what God has already said no to. Stop knocking on doors he's already shut, and start preparing for the one he's about to open. One that no man can close. Trust the closed doors. Trust the detours. Trust the God who leads through both. There's something stirring in you, a thought that keeps coming back, a dream you've tried to dismiss, a vision that keeps waking you up at night. You've tried to ignore it, reason with it, even convince yourself that it's too big, too crazy, too unrealistic, but it won't go away. It keeps showing up in your heart, your prayers, your journal, and your quiet moments. That's not just imagination. That's not random. That's God speaking. That's a divine signal. When something continues to pull at your spirit, no matter how much time passes, it may be a sign that God is calling to move. You see, God often plants the seeds of purpose in us long before the world sees the fruit. And those seeds show up as recurring dreams, consistent thoughts and passions you can't shake. That vision that keeps coming back, even when you tried to bury it, is not there by accident. It's a sign, a whisper from heaven that says, you were made for this. That vision is God's way of aligning your heart with your assignment. But let's be honest, it's scary. When the vision is big, it feels overwhelming. You begin to question everything. Am I qualified? Do I have enough resources? What will people think? And so we delay. We stay in safe places. We keep the vision on the shelf, convincing ourselves that the timing isn't right. But while we wait for the perfect moment, we forget one important truth. God doesn't give you the whole staircase, just the next step. God doesn't speak to excite your imagination. He speaks to awaken your obedience. If he keeps showing you the same thing over and over, it's because he's preparing you to move toward it. The repetition of a dream is confirmation. The more it presses on your heart, the more likely it is that your spirit is being aligned with God's purpose for your life. Moses had a vision too, a deep inner call to set his people free, but he didn't feel qualified. He questioned his ability to speak, his authority, his value. But the vision kept returning. God didn't let Moses off the hook. He kept reminding him, I will be with you. Because God doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. The same goes for you. That recurring dream may not make full sense right now, but that doesn't mean it's not real. It might be starting small. An idea, a desire, a frustration with the way things are. But don't dismiss small beginnings. Remember, every forest starts with a seed. The fact that this vision keeps resurfacing is proof that it's planted deep in your spiritual soil. And what's planted by God will not die, not even in seasons of delay. Too often, we treat God's vision like an option. We think it's just a side idea, something we might pursue someday. But when God gives you a vision, it's not a suggestion, it's a summons. He's not trying to decorate your thoughts. He's trying to direct your steps. And until you start walking toward it, you'll never see the fullness of what he's trying to bring to life through you. The most dangerous thing you can do with a God-given vision is nothing. Fear will whisper that you're not enough. Logic will say it doesn't make sense. People will doubt you. But if God planted it, then he's already gone ahead of you. Provision is waiting on the other side of obedience. Resources are waiting. Favor is waiting, but they're unlocked by your movement. You don't have to build the whole thing today. You just have to start. Write the first page. Make the first call. Share the idea with someone you trust. Take the first step. Because every great calling begins with a decision to stop ignoring the vision and start walking. If the same idea keeps coming back, if the dream still lives in your heart after all this time, if you feel deep in your spirit that there's more, then it's not just a dream, it's a directive. God is speaking, and he's saying move. So stop dismissing what won't disappear. Stop silencing the vision that keeps shouting in your soul. Start believing that if God called you to it, he will bring you through it. The dream is not a coincidence. It's a calling. You didn't expect it. You thought these people would be with you forever. They supported you once, believed in you, even helped you grow. But now they're distant. The conversations are fewer. The connection is fading. Maybe there was a conflict. Maybe it just happened slowly over time. Regardless of how it happened, it hurts. The separation feels confusing, even painful. But what if I told you that this shift isn't random? What if this loss is actually a sign that God is telling you to move? When God begins to shift you into a new season, one of the first things he does is adjust your circle. Not everyone can go with you where he's taking you. Not everyone who started with you is meant to finish with you. Some people were assigned to your life for a specific time and purpose, and once that purpose is fulfilled, their season ends. It's not personal, it's preparation. God removes who no longer fits the future. He's building. As humans, we hold on tightly, especially to relationships. We invest emotionally. We create attachments. And so when someone walks away, or when a connection feels like it's breaking, we panic. We try to fix it. We chase closure. We question what went wrong. But sometimes nothing went wrong. Sometimes God is simply clearing space. You see, relationships are like scaffolding. They're essential while the building is going up. But eventually the scaffolding has to come down for the structure to stand on its own. The people who once helped you build your foundation might not be the ones called to help you build the next level. God sees what we can't. He sees how certain people, though once helpful, might now hold us back. And in his wisdom, he makes the hard move. He separates. Think of Abraham. God told him, leave your country, your people, and your father's household and go to the land I will show you. That wasn't just a physical move. It was a relational one. God was saying, I need you to come out from among them. Because where I'm taking you, not everyone can follow. That instruction wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And because Abraham obeyed, he stepped into destiny. Jesus experienced this too. As his mission grew clearer, his circle grew smaller. He had 12 disciples, but only 3 went with him up the mountain. And when it came to the cross, the fulfillment of his calling, he was completely alone. Why? Because purpose has a price. And sometimes that price is separation. You might feel abandoned, misunderstood, or even betrayed. But what if that disconnection is divine? What if God is allowing people to leave because he's about to bring others who are more aligned with your next chapter? You've been asking for clarity, elevation, growth, and this might be how it comes. Not with addition, but with subtraction. We often cry over the people who walked away, not realizing that God is answering a prayer we once prayed. You asked him to protect your peace. You asked him to reveal who's really for you. You asked him to remove distractions. And now that he's doing it, it feels like loss, but in reality, it's gain. He's not taking people from you. He's taking you to a new place. Here's what's hard. The ones you're losing might not be bad people. In fact, they might be good people. Just not God's people for your next season. That's why it's so confusing. But obedience means trusting God's wisdom, even when it doesn't make emotional sense, even when you feel lonely, even when you don't understand. Don't chase what God has released. Don't fight to reopen a door He's already closed. The absence of certain people in your life may be making room for clarity, focus, and alignment. He's refining your circle so you're not weighed down on the journey ahead. You don't need 100 people who kind of support you. You need the right few who truly believe in what God is doing through you. So if your circle is shrinking, if people are leaving, if relationships are shifting, take a deep breath. It's not rejection, it's redirection. It's not punishment, it's positioning. Trust the pruning. It's part of the process. God doesn't remove people to hurt you. He does it to help you. He's moving things around because he's moving you forward. Let go and walk forward. Your next season is waiting. There's a feeling you can't quite explain. A pull, a nudge, a deep inner stirring that won't leave you alone. You can be in a room full of people going through your routine, handling life like normal, but underneath it all, there's this quiet voice telling you there's something more. It doesn't come with thunder or lightning. It doesn't shout, but it persists, day after day, week after week. It's a sense that where you are is no longer where you're meant to stay. That strong pull toward the unknown. That's not anxiety or restlessness. That may be God calling you to move. God rarely calls us to stay in the familiar forever. Throughout Scripture, when God had something greater in store for someone, he asked them to leave what they knew and step into something familiar. It's in those moments of uncertainty, when you feel drawn towards something you can't fully explain, that God often begins the most transformational work in your life. The problem is, we're trained to trust what we can see. We're taught to cling to certainty, to only move when we have a plan, a guarantee, a map. But God doesn't operate on human life. He operates on faith. And faith, by its very nature, requires movement without full understanding. When God is calling you into a new season, you'll often feel that deep internal pull before you see any external confirmation. That's why it feels risky. That's why it feels like stepping to the dark. You may not have a full vision of where you're going, but you know you can't stay where you are. You feel the discontent. You sense the shift. You try to make the old places feel right again.
But they don't.
The routines feel hollow. The things that used to excite you now feel like they're holding you. You're not ungrateful. You've just outgrown the current. Level toward the unknown is God's way of inviting you higher. It's in these moments that we have to choose comfort or calling, familiarity or faith, safety or surrender. God will never force you to move. He'll invite you, but the invitation won't always come with detailed instructions. Sometimes it's just a whisper that won't leave, a dream that keeps coming back, a thought that won't die, a door that keeps appearing in your hand, even though you don't know what's on the other side. Abraham didn't know where he was going. When God told him to leave his country, he just knew God was calling him, and that was enough. Peter didn't know he could walk on water. He just responded to the voice of Jesus, saying, "Come." Every story of faith begins with that same moment, a decision to say yes to the unknown, because you trust the one who's calling. This strong pull toward the unknown isn't meant to terrify. It's meant to awaken you. You weren't created to live stuck in cycles. You weren't designed to stay stagnant. The spiritual tension you feel is the evidence that God is preparing you for something greater. He disrupts your comfort to deepen your trust, and the longer you resist it, the heavier that tension becomes, until one day you realize the fear of staying stuck is greater than the fear of stepping out. God often calls us forward before we feel ready. He doesn't wait for us to have all the answers. He looks for hearts that are willing to follow the tug, willing to step even when the path is foggy, willing to say yes even when there's no message, just a whisper. And here's the truth. If God is pulling you towards something, it means he's already gone. He's already gone before you. He's already made a way. He's already lined up provision, people, and opportunities. But none of that will be activated until you move, until you take that first step, until you say, I don't know everything, but I trust the one who does. So if you've been feeling that holy discomfort, that unexplained urge to shift, don't ignore it. Don't push it away. Don't try to reason it into silence. That pull is not your imagination. It's your invitation. God doesn't always call us with clarity, but he always calls us with purpose. That pull toward the unknown, it's sacred, it's divine, and it's time to follow. Move, even if it's just one step. Move in faith, because your next season isn't waiting on certainty. It's waiting your obedience. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't the ones people can see. You're showing smiling, checking the boxes, but inside you're exhausted. You feel stuck, spiritually dry. Emotion, you keep pushing forward, because that's what you've always. You stay in the same routine, the same roles, the same responsibilities, because it's what's expected. But something inside you feels, you pray, but it feels like your prayers are hitting the ceiling. You worship, but your heart feels you try to stir yourself up, but the fire just isn't there. You've tried to ignore it, to shake it off, to keep going, but that heaviness hasn't lifted. That lack of peace hasn't gone. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're being called. Maybe that deep inner discomfort is God's way of telling you it's time to move. God doesn't always shout when he's calling. Stat shift. Sometimes he speaks through the silence, through the still. This isn't where you're meant to stay. One of the clearest signs that God is prepared to move you is when your peace leaves. The fulfillment you once felt is now replaced by restlessness. That's not that's divine discontent. Divine discontent. Divine discontent is different from ingratitude. You're not being, you're being awakened. There comes a point in every believer's life when God starts pulling you out of the familiar, not because it's bad, but because he has something more, something deeper, something higher. And the way he starts preparing your heart is by removing your peace from the old place. Look at the story of Elijah. After a great victory, he found himself alone in a cave, discouraged, exhausted, and questioning everything. He had done what God asked, but now he was burnt out and ready to give up. And it was in that quiet, vulnerable moment that God whispered new direction. He didn't rebuke Elijah. He redirected him. He didn't shame him for feeling empty. He used that emptiness as a setup for the next assignment. Maybe you're like Elijah. Maybe you've poured everything you had into what God once called you to do, but now the fire's gone. You're not late. You're not disobedient. You're just sensing a shift. And instead of trying to fan a flame that's gone, maybe it's time to seek the next spark. Because where there's no peace, there's often no longer peace. Peace isn't just a feeling, it's a compass. When something is often you pay attention. When you can't find rest in a place that once felt right, don't ignore it. God may be allowing the discomfort not to punish you, but to propel you. He disrupts your comfort to redirect your focus. He unsettles your spirit so you won't settle for less than what he's prepared. It takes courage to admit that a season is ending, especially when you've invested time, energy, and even identity into it. But holding on to what once was can keep you from stepping into what could be. Peace is not found in comfort zones. It's found in obedience, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means walking away from something good to step into something greater. Sometimes God lets your peace fade, so your pursuit will grow. He knows if you stay too comfortable, you miss the invitation to something new. That lack of fulfillment you're feeling, that dryness in your soul, it's not a flaw, it's a sign, a signal that your time in this place might be done. And while the next step may not be clear, the voice of peace is when you walk in God's direction. Peace follows, even if it doesn't make sense to us. So stop forcing yourself to stay where you no longer feel. Stop pretending it's still working when you know in your spirit it's if the peace is gone. Start seeking one who gives. Let him show you where he's leading you. Next, your obedience will unlock fresh fire, renewed purpose, and a deeper connection with him than you've ever known. The loss of peace isn't a punishment, it's a prompting. And if you're feeling it, it may be time to move. You've been praying, asking for a sign, waiting on direction. You've been telling God, just show me what to do, and I'll do. But it seems like everything is closed. Doors that once opened easily are now locked. Opportunities you thought were certain have disappeared. Conversations have gone. Connections have faded. It's like you're standing still in a space where nothing moves. At first you thought it was just a delay, but as time passes, the silence starts to speak louder. The stillness begins to feel sacred. And maybe, just maybe, this lack of movement isn't a punishment, it's a message. Because sometimes when everything around you seems to slow down or stop, it's God's way of telling you it's time to move. When God is preparing to shift you into a new season, he often begins by allowing certain things to fall away. It's not always. In fact, most divine transitions start with subtle signs. Closed doors, ended relationships, expired assignments, or sudden discomfort in a place that used to feel right. You try to stay committed. You keep pushing, showing up, doing what worked before, but it no longer bears fruit. You no longer feel the flow. That's not faith. That's alignment. That's God saying, this season is done. We tend to associate God's guidance with open doors, but often, the clearest sign that he's calling you somewhere new is a closed one. In his mercy, he removes access to places we've outgrown, not because we did something wrong, but because he knows staying would limit us. It's in those moments of restriction that God is actually redirecting us. He's not denying your destiny. He's developing it. Think about the Israelites. For years they wandered in the wilderness, following signs, clouds by day, fire by night. But the moment came when the manna stopped falling. What once sustained them was no longer available. That was their signal. The provision had moved because their position needed to shift. God was no longer feeding them in the wilderness because he's calling them into the promise. In the same way, when certain things stop working in your life, when you no longer feel energized, when the grace lifties disappear, it may not be it may be in asked. You asked God to take you high. You asked him to increase your faith, your purpose, your impact. But growth always comes with change. And sometimes that change starts with an he often prays for clarity, but then resists the way it comes. We want a voice from heaven, a burning bush, a prophetic dream, but sometimes clarity comes through the closing of doors and the drying of old. God knows that if he doesn't shift something around you, you'll never shift something within. And so he allows the job to change, the friendship to fade, the path to grow still. Not because he's absent, but because he's guiding. You've been waiting for something to start, but maybe God is waiting on you to stop forcing stop clinging to expired seeds. Stop trying to revive what he's already released. When things stop working, when the grace lifts, when the favor fades, don't panic. Pay attention. That stillness is not it's intentional. It's space for you to hear again. We don't all when what once felt like home now feels it's time to ask God, where are you leading me? Because his silence doesn't mean he's absent. It may mean he's already gone ahead and is waiting for you.